I'm going to go over the advanced beats that are on top of page 91 in your books, and also the song Hold On that uses the beats from that bit of the book. To start with, these beats all have one thing in common, and that is on the second beat to start with, they have a snare and then a bass. Now these are quavers, which is why they join together, so a monkey. If we look at the very first beat and get that one going, after that the others should come relatively easily because they're using the same pattern. So the first beat we're going to look at does bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, tap. We really want to get the snare, bass, bass, snare, bass, bass part of it to be really solid. So A going a little bit quicker, bass, snare, bass, bass, snare, tap. With quite a lot of my pupils, I use more. Fish and chips, please, more. Fish and chips, please, to kind of help get the rhythm of the beat. When we look at B, so the second beat written on there, we do that pattern, but we do it twice. So when you get to the end of the bar and you repeat back, you still keep doing your bass, bass. So it will go bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, and then it just continues. So you get into your fish and chips, tap, fish and chips, tap, fish and chips, and it will carry on like that. As you go down the page, C is like a basic beat, the very first one that we would have learnt. Bass, tap, snare, tap, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, to get you back to the beginning. So all you're doing is putting an extra bass drum at the end of the bar. I like D, this one seems to fall off the sticks quite nicely. We've got a double bass drum on the third beat. Other than that, it's exactly the same as C. So bass, tap, snare, tap, bass, bass, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, tap, bass, bass, snare, bass, bass. Remember always when you've got the two basses together to aim for the second one, and chips, so that that one has more emphasis because it's on the beat. The other beats as you go down slightly vary the pattern, but you will always see the snare and the bass either on the second beat or on the fourth beat, or both. There's just an increase of the amount of bass drums that are used. So work your way steadily down the page, and I've played the examples for you to hear. G. H. I. And J. Looking at Hold On, this uses the first two beats from page 91 that we've just been looking at. It does B first and then A. And those two bars put together make up the whole piece. So we've got the repeat sign with the 2 written over it, so it means repeat the last 2 bars, which means that we're playing the same 2 bars 6 times before you get to the chorus. You play that phrase, and even when you get to the chorus you're still playing that phrase. We just add in the crash cymbal. So let's look at the 2-bar phrase. We want a really solid blues rock groove for this one. Not a lot of variation, but plenty of energy and drive, so getting the and chips without getting it any faster. Even control with your hi-hat, nice and tip of the stick on the hi-hat to give it a nice clean sound. So going from the start, your pattern is going to be bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, tap. So looking out at the very end there, we kind of get into the rhythm of the snare, bass, bass, but on the last time we have a snare tap. So make sure that one goes in, give yourself a little breather before you start the pattern again. Once you've got those 2 bars and you feel really secure repeating them round, then you can have a go at playing the first bit with the backing. When we get to the chorus, we use a crash cymbal with the bass drum on the first beat. You then have a little pause because we don't have the tap after the bass and the crash before we start the snare, bass, bass. So we'll go crash with bass and then snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, bass, bass, tap, snare, tap. Then we do that again at the beginning of the last line and we have a crash to finish. But don't forget, it all uses the same 2 beats repeated round and round.
You gotta